Welcome back to the Funding Blueprint. Today we have an exciting episode lined up for you. Our guest is Kelly Fryer, the Executive Director of FinTech Sandbox, a leading organization that supports the innovation and growth of FinTech startups. Kelly brings a wealth of experience in both partnering with major financial service companies and nurturing early-stage FinTech ventures. Before her role at FinTech Sandbox, Kelly was the Director of Techstars' FinTech Accelerator program, the Barclays Accelerator powered by Techstars New York. For 3 years, she managed accelerator operations, fostered a vibrant community, and advised numerous startups on their journey to success. Kelly's background also includes several years at Bloomberg LP's global data team, where she managed relationships with financial data providers and banks, ran the custom index business, and led technical projects. Kelly holds an MBA from Indiana University's Kelley School of Business, with a focus on corporate innovation and venture development. Her extensive knowledge and hands-on experience in the fintech sector makes her a true leader and innovator in the field. Join us as we dive deep into Kelly's journey, her insights on the fintech landscape, and her vision for the future of financial technology. Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course, it's our pleasure. So let's kind of hop right in. The spark of a brilliant idea is what ignites the entrepreneurial journey. Every successful startup began as a concept, a vision for a better way of doing things. But translating that initial spark into a thriving business requires more than just passion. It takes strategy, planning, and a roadmap to navigate the often challenging path from idea to execution. Kelly, let's talk about empowering aspiring entrepreneurs. Many have incredible ideas, but translating those ideas into a viable business plan can feel like a daunting leap. What resources and educational tools can bridge this gap, equipping these passionate individuals with the knowledge and tools to turn their concepts into concrete plans with a path to success?
Yeah. Well, first, congratulations for those that are in that stage. It's an exciting and I'm sure sometimes kind of nerve-wracking time in the journey. My recommendations for resources are first, become absolutely obsessed with your market, like learn everything you possibly can about it, especially if it's not a space you've worked in before. So figure out who are the incumbents, what are their differentiations, what trends and news are going on in the space, what's common business models to consider. Talk to prospective customers, understand your buyer versus your user, especially if you're in a B2B model and setting. What are their pain points? How do they quantify them? Is it in terms of dollars, time wasted, time saved, dollars saved? Like there's so many different nuances to that to figure that out. What are their alternatives right now? What are the must-haves versus nice-to-have? Willingness to pay, all of those kinds of things. And really just like talk to as many people in this space as possible. Be open, listen, confirm or refute, your own hypotheses of what the issues are, how your product could solve for it, that sort of thing. So that's one. Two, find resourceful ways to test your ideas and product like quickly and cheaply. I've seen so many startups who want to go and build everything before they've even drawn a mock-up and shown it to potential users. Like get creative, see if you can get people to sign up for a newsletter and just publish content before you build a whole platform, or do a meetup on the topic and build from there. And then third, surround yourself with incredible people, not just your friends and people you like, but people who are obsessed with the space as you are, people who complement your own skill sets and fill in gaps that maybe you have. I've seen this especially with like teams that are all highly technical and then they don't have anyone who can sell the vision and like actually sell the product to people. So thinking about the gaps that you have in your own skill set and being really honest about that. And then people, honestly, who you want to be in the trenches with when times get hard, because they will get hard and they will get stressful. And like, are these people that will help get you through it and that will dig in and figure it out and make it work. So those are kind of my resources or suggestions for those at that early stage trying to figure out, okay, is this viable?
Great points. Well, happy to hear that at least my company, StartHub, is on the right track, because it seems that what you just mentioned seems to align, which is great. So I'm happy to hear that. Let's kind of shift our focus now and start talking more about specific programs. You had a lot of experience with Techstars running their FinTech program, and now you're kind of running FinTech Sandbox. So let's kind of shift our focus to that for a sec. Launching your startup is like embarking on an expedition. There are many paths you can take, each with its own advantages and challenges, as we just addressed. The startup ecosystem offers a wealth of resources, from accelerator and incubators to co-working spaces. But with so many options, choosing the right one can feel overwhelming. So Kelly, let's kind of unpack the different types of startup programs. You have accelerators, you have incubators, you have co-working spaces. How can early stage founders navigate this diverse landscape and identify the program that best equips them with the tools, mentorship, and network to propel their venture towards success?
Yeah, you're right. There's so many incredible resources out there for startups, especially at the early stages. I think of each one as kind of fulfilling different goals or being for different points in your life cycle. A good example is our own program, FinTech Sandbox's Data Access Residency. We give early stage startups free access to data sets and infrastructure in order to build their products. So we work with about 40 different data providers to give our vetted startups free access to data sets. So that's obviously fulfilling a very specific need of data access for these fintech startups. And so there's a lot of programs that are really focused on that and trying to align those with your own goals. So if I think about the different options, there's co-working spaces. I really think about that as like community centered. So surrounding yourself with other startup founders who are in similar situations. One of our partners, Rise, created by Barclays, runs a fintech focused co-working space in New York. They also host, fintech events, happy hours. So it's a camaraderie and puts you in the ecosystem more and gives you an environment to thrive and you build your product. So that's co-working space. So think of it as like your home base. Incubators are kind of a co-working accelerator hybrid. Like they're usually longer term, several months or even years, and more of a go at your own pace, but with some support. So they typically give you desk space. They typically give discounted resources like legal or consulting services, maybe ad hoc workshops, networking events, office hours, but not necessarily like a set curriculum that you are required to follow. Accelerators then typically is a format of like 3 or so month boot camp. So sometimes virtually, mostly in person, typically make an investment in exchange for some equity in your business. So it is great for getting some initial funding and a stamp of credibility. If you say that I'm a YC backed startup, I'm a Techstars backed startup. And it's great for having a very methodical, tried and true process of validating aspects of your business and getting tons of feedback from that. I've seen some very smart pivots come from accelerator programs. And I think they're also strong for like access to networks. So if you need like corporate or partnership leads, if you need investors for your next fundraising rounds, and then kind of each accelerator has a slightly different focus, whether that be sector, stage, geography, just trying to get you plugged into your next milestone. But on the flip side, they're a lot, right? You're giving up part of your company, and it's essentially going to school while also running your business, which can be draining at the same time. And then, of course, there's other things like pitch events, which are great for exposure, corporate specific programs. So there's a ton of options, obviously, but I'd say for all of them, no matter what you get out of it, what you put into it, you have to be intentional about your end goals and prioritization because there's only so much time every day, and making the effort in order to get the return that you want and being very focused on that. Otherwise, I've seen companies go through really great programs and still not get out of it much of anything. And I think that really is, kind of up to the founders to make that happen.
Solid points. Solid points. Ryan Serhant, I'm not sure if you know who he is, but he's a billion-dollar real estate broker. He has this one thing called the 1,000-minute rule. You only have 1,000 minutes in a day to make things work and to make things count. So I couldn't really agree more with you on that. Let's kind of shift our focus now to data democratization for a second. The funding landscape for startups, especially those that are in AI, can feel like a bit like a roller coaster ride these days. There are periods of exuberant investment, and now we're seeing a lot of pullback. For early stage entrepreneurs, this can create a challenge. Securing funding is crucial for growth, but competition for those VC dollars is starting to heat up. So Kelly, let's kind of navigate this changing financial climate. With the dip in VC and AI funding, what creative strategies can resourceful early stage founders employ to secure the resources they need to bring their innovative ideas to life, even in a tightening market?
Yeah. So I think you bring up some really excellent points about kind of what's going on just generally in the fundraising market right now. Before even focusing on securing funding, I think it's even more important to look at how can you reduce your burn? Where can you cut down? What are things you could potentially be doing or getting for free now? Whether that's again like interns or fellows through universities that could come and help and do some work on your product without having to increase your burn rate in terms of paying for headcount. So how can you be creative about things like that and finding ways to trim and be as lean and resourceful as possible? In terms of fundraising, it's really preparing for the fundraising process well in advance and planning for it to take longer than expected, because that's just what's kind of happening right now. I see so many companies who are like, yeah, I'm going to go open my fundraising round in the next month. And it's like, okay, great. Where's your investor target list? And they have no clue what I'm talking about. So it's like, do you have a well-researched investor target list already ready to go? Do you have people in your network who already have put their names to making those warm intros for you? Because those are things that should be ready before you even say my round is open. So that way you can try and expedite the process as much as possible. But I mean, just generally, as the funding market is tightening, I think you're seeing more and more investors who want de-risked investments, as in they're looking for better revenue numbers, or if not revenue, at least like go to market and pipeline stats. They want more detailed plans around handling of compliance and regulation. So I think right now the market's just really demanding I think more mature stats and metrics than they were willing to accept, say, 3 years ago.
Right. No, no, 100%. There's just some solid points. FinTech, let's talk about really FinTech from a fundraising perspective now. Specifically FinTech. Launching a FinTech startup isn't just about securing a hefty VC investment, right? It's about building a sustainable ecosystem. Let's kind of use this example for a second. Imagine a thriving garden, right? It needs not just fertilizer, which is the funding, but also a healthy network of established plants, which is the financial institutions, in order for it to really flourish. These established players have vast experience, customer bases, and resources. So Kelly, let's kind of explore the importance of collaboration. While funding is undeniably important, as we mentioned, what strategies can fintech founders leverage to build strong, long-term relationships with established financial institutions?
Yeah, that's interesting. I've actually been seeing a lot more recently of early stage fintech startups that are being smart about like their advisory board or their mentor network by finding folks at established financial institutions who give the startup credibility. It's a nice logo to put on the slides, and also can give some feedback and mentorship to the startup as they're growing, to build that relationship on the founder's advisory board, on their mentor network, and things like that. So I think that's one interesting way that I'm seeing a little bit more of lately. But I also think this goes back to kind of that earlier question about becoming obsessed with our market and customer, right? Like talk to these institutions, listen to them, use it initially really as like a fact-finding mission about their needs, their pain points. Don't go straight in like trying to sell when you think about that long-term relationship. I've seen many of these take several years to build. Like maybe they're not interested initially, but like ends up becoming one of their biggest customers. So figuring out what's most important to that institution or department, what are they struggling with? How big of a problem is it for them? And putting these again really into like thinking must-have solutions. Not nice to have, especially again as organizations have tightening budgets. This has to be something that's going to solve a problem from day one, and thinking about that your product in terms of meaningful ROI to the company, new customers acquired, reduced churn, reduced headcount spend, and thinking about it that way. The other big thing, especially for financial services, you do see this in other industries, but I think it's especially important in financial services, is being compliance ready. Have your lawyer on hand, prep the paperwork and documents that you're likely going to be asked for. There's going to be a lot of red tape and paperwork. Even if you get a yes on the partnership, relatively quickly, you're going to have to jump through a lot of hoops to be an approved vendor and to get onboarded and everything like that. So help make that process faster and a bit more expedited for yourself by already having those things in line and ready to go for the institution.
Makes sense. Would you say that, it's typically a gradual process to partner up with financial institutions, like other partnerships, more gradual?
Yeah, gradual, or I would just use slow. Is probably the word that I would use. Gradual probably seems a little too nice to me. Obviously, like it's one of those of the bigger the institution, and I'd say the more traditional or entrenched it is, the slower and more gradual the process is going to be. It's one thing if you partner with another fintech. It's another if you partner with a community or regional bank, and then it's a whole nother if you're partnering with JP Morgan or Wells Fargo or a big institution. Those processes are going to take three different, very different timelines. So that's the other thing to think about is like, are there smaller yet still very valuable partners that you could get where that sales cycle or that partnership conversation is going to be a bit shorter. You'll be able to get to the decision maker and get to the yes or the no much quicker to again shorten that timeline for yourself.
Right. Right. I mean, look, you've been in finance for quite some time, right? And the world of finance is undergoing a fascinating transformation. Just a decade ago, as you know, fintech was just a niche industry. Today, it's disrupting traditional models and becoming increasingly integrated into our daily lives, if you really think about it. So, there's even a saying gaining traction saying every company will be a fintech company. Now, Kelly, this statement hints at a future where the boundaries between finance and technology blur. So let's kind of explore this intriguing concept. What does the idea of every company will be a fintech company mean for the future of financial services? And how can entrepreneurs position themselves to thrive and capitalize on this evolving landscape where technology and finance becomes even more intertwined?
I mean, I think you phrased it exactly right. It's that blurring between, what's a financial product and what's a product for another industry or another type of technology. And you're just seeing as we pay for things digitally, as we engage in digital identity and cybersecurity, which a lot of people kind of fall under the fintech bucket. You're just seeing more and more of that blurring. On the one hand, from a financial services perspective, you have more competition, right? You have folks like Apple and Walmart and like car manufacturers and others who are not traditional FIs who are now launching financial products. But on the other hand, it also means that you have more institutions to partner with and sell to as a startup or as a fintech. You can think outside of the box and be more creative in your go-to-market strategy of who you're targeting, and it can really broaden up your sales pipeline and even find some new demographics. Great example is I know of a company who's now like targeting manufacturing companies, and they hadn't really for a lending product, and they hadn't really thought about that before. So it opens up a lot of new options for you. I think too, as a consumer generally, like personally, I'm hopeful that it also creates better financial solutions and products that meet people where they are. You're able to blend healthcare and financial services, infrastructure and financial services, supply chain, all of these things. And so it creates products that are built for real world challenges that people actually deal with every day and not just like our everyday traditional financial products that we've been using for decades and decades and decades.
Right, right. No, those are some great points. Let's talk about AI and finance in particular. Obviously, I wanted to save the best for last. Imagine financial, imagine financial services as a once grand but now clunky mainframe computer. It processes information, but it's slow and it lacks the agility to adapt to our fast-paced world. Artificial intelligence, AI, is like a revolutionary new neural network, which is like very powerful, very adaptable, and poised to transform the financial landscape. The integration of AI is already making waves, as we're seeing, and its impact is only going to accelerate. Let's talk about how it really peers into the future of finance. AI is rapidly changing the game, but how exactly will it reshape the financial services industry? And what are some key areas where we can expect to see AI have a significant impact? And how can these advancements empower both institutions and consumers?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, obviously AI is such a hot topic over the last year or two, and has had rapid advancements, rapid adoption, especially kind of in the mainstream and with large institutions. But it's also interesting that I remember in like 2017 where we were, I was vetting AI startups that were doing some of these things as well. So it's like it's this thing that's been around for a long time, but it's also this thing that's had such rapid movement in just the last couple years as well. But it's obviously changing the game for many industries, including financial services. I think right now you're seeing financial services use AI for a lot of things behind the scenes. So think like data aggregation and analysis and visualization, whether that be like everything from like text and document processing, especially in the capital markets arena, finding trends and like comparables very easily. You also see it with like back office decision making. Again, things that like still need to be reviewed by humans, but like still doing some like back office work and recommendations. You see it with like fraud and error detection. Chatbot and customer service processing is really getting to be a big thing. So I think these are things that are only going to continue to grow and find even more applications. But at the same point, I think financial services, or at least the larger institutions, are still generally a bit hesitant to implement AI meaningfully in like an end consumer setting. I think the risk is still a bit too great for them to deploy it that way just yet. I've talked to several like AI compliance and governance teams that are really having their handfuls these days, honestly, with like assessing these models, assigning best practices, assigning governance rules for how their employees can use them. So it's also a lot of new territory that I think financial services is still quite nervous about from a risk perspective, especially with like large institutions and players.
Great points. Yeah, we're definitely seeing that, especially from like a fraud perspective and from a comps, even real estate. If you think about real estate for a second, like it's so easy right now to run comps as an agent. If you think about it, you use different types of tools to do that for you. So you don't necessarily have to do it manually or rely on the MLS to get your data. There's so many other different types of sources out there where you can acquire your data. So couldn't agree more with you on that. Have to say that it's probably one of the most interesting FinTech episodes that I've managed to conduct. So I've definitely learned a lot about this, and I hope that our audience has as well. Wanted to thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Funding Blueprint. We hope that you enjoyed today's episode with our insightful guest, Kelly Fryer. It was fascinating to learn more about the FinTech world, the importance of fostering innovation, and the AI revolution. If you'd like to learn more about Kelly and the incredible work that she is doing at FinTech Sandbox, be sure to check out their website and social media links in the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode, and leave us a review if you enjoyed the show. Thank you, and until next time.